University. Don't worry, I got that covered. She's now working in Chicago. We have 2 Purdue students, Margaret and Joseph, our twins, are both sophomores, and our soon-to-be Purdue student, Philip, is a senior at Westside High School this year. We're so grateful that we got to raise our kids here. Tippecanoe County is such a wonderfully welcoming place to live. I have enjoyed, for 28 years, a tremendously fulfilling career as a law professor. For 7 years before that, I was a PhD student in law at the University of California at Berkeley. During high school and college, I worked summers as a legal secretary for my father and for law firms in Columbus, Ohio, where I'm from. I've written and edited 3 books on American constitutional law and legal history. I've taught law and legal history at 3 law schools and in 3 different undergraduate legal studies programs. I see the position of clerk of courts as a partnership with the judges and lawyers who administer justice in Tippecanoe County. My background, training, and professional experience are an ideal fit for this position. I've spoken to many members of the bar this year. Their main concern seems to be that the next clerk should have experience with the legal system. I've got that in spades. I'm also passionate about the clerk's position on the election board, which administers all the elections in our county. It is absolutely essential that we replace our outdated voting machines with new machines that live up to industry standards and provide both election security and confidence to voters that their ballots have been counted as intended. Paper ballots and optical scanners are already used to process absentee ballots. We should adopt the same technology for in-person voting. We should also provide each voter with a receipt so that they know their ballot was counted as cast. Other counties in Indiana already do this. Why we aren't already is a mystery, but we can fix it next year. That's the kind of active, involved clerk I intend to be if elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie Roush, you have 4 minutes.
I'm Julie Roush, and I want to ditto all of the thank yous, but I also want to add Tippecanoe County. I want to thank them for providing this room for us. I am currently the Fairfield Township trustee, and I have been in this community for over 30 years, and for almost that same amount of time, I have been a community volunteer. I raised my 3 children here. All of us but one are Purdue graduates. Tony chose a different path and graduated from ISU, but we still love him. He is a 1st Lieutenant Army Ranger. Joshua is in medical school, and he is a 2nd Lieutenant in the Air Force. Jessica recently graduated from Purdue. My husband, Mike, my #1 supporter, is a retired police officer and currently works for the City of Lafayette as an operations manager. We are both committed to Tippecanoe County, our family, and our faith. As you can see, we are a family committed to service. As a financial advisor with Smith Barney while serving on the township board, the people I worked with in the trustee's office on the board asked me to run as trustee, just as I was asked by people in the county to run as clerk. It wasn't an easy choice, but I really enjoyed teaching people, especially divorced and widowed women, among other things, how to manage and save money and how to get out of debt. I knew I could use these skills to help those needing financial assistance at the township. So as trustee, I implemented a representative payee program along with new technology, whereas we manage Social Security monies and many times the life of an elderly or disabled person. I'm here to tell you public service is rewarding. To see a man cry because for the first time in 20 years, he has a bed. Or another man cry because he knows my staff and I love him when his own daughter stole from him and abused him. Makes all the hard work worthwhile. You see, my office goes above and beyond to serve the public, and I will continue that practice as county clerk. Our county is experiencing significant growth, and with that, the responsibilities of the clerk's office have grown and are more important than ever. The administration of records and financial responsibilities in support of the judicial system and child support collections and distributions are critical functions. With the additional responsibilities of administering our elections and voting systems, it is crucial that the clerk be experienced and proven in the duties and in processes involved, and that is why I'm running for this position. I am driven and goal-oriented, and my desire is to get things done efficiently and do it professionally. With an MBA from Purdue, a career in financial management, and 12 years serving as Fairfield Township trustee, I am confident I have developed the skills demonstrated this office requires. All of my experiences have given me a solid foundation to work in county government. I intend to carry on the high level of service this office has a reputation for, while looking for opportunities to improve it. I have the administrative experience and education needed. I have proven my abilities. I am trusted by the community and have maintained strong working relationships with local government officials of both parties and have engaged with people from all walks of life. Our community is very important to me, and so is my belief in public service. And with your support, I hope to continue serving the community as your county clerk.
Excellent, thank you. I will begin with the first question, and Vicki Weesty will get to answer first. Both of you will be new in this position. What would you do differently in this job from the current county clerk? Vicki Weesty?
I think the first thing that I'm going to do is listen and observe, and in particular, to gain a close working knowledge of the function of all of the 28 employees in the clerk's office. It's important to understand how it's been working well. I've also already begun to talk to judges about what they would like to see done better. There are some issues with how the courts interact, particularly concerning the two different e-filing systems that are in use. So there are some issues of coordination. There are some technology differences that have to be bridged. There's an issue that sometimes arises where the clerk's employees that are cited in the courtrooms have to be supervised by the clerk, but also respond to the judges. So I would like to see what can be done to smooth that employer-employee relationship. I intend to be a good supervisor, a good caretaker of public treasury monies that are appropriated to the clerk's office, and to administer justice in partnership with the judges and lawyers.
Thank you. I will repeat the question for Julie Roush. Both of you will be new in this position. What would you do differently in this job from the current county clerk? Julie Roush?
I would first analyze the operation by doing a SWOT analysis. That is to find the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. I will seek the inputs of many stakeholders for their opinions of what's being done well and what is not. I will seek the inputs of my staff, as no one knows better than they on what is needed to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the office. They need to be heard as to what will help them and support them in their daily work. I will seek the inputs of the judges and their staff, as well as other county offices, to identify the reality of their needs and how they can be better served. I will be open to inputs of clients and the community at large. Clerk functions are of great importance to the community. I will review the hours of operation and solicit input from various stakeholders to see if adding a second day of extended hours is justified. I will ask the question on what will bring value to the clerk's office and how can we better streamline communication and ease shared duties. I will work with our local judges on the information they want for pro se or do-it-yourself users is readily available via the clerk's website, and the court and clerk information is available online bilingually. Improving the website usability will be a priority. I will also be reviewing staff assignments and workload structure. We need a financial plan to update and replace our election technology. We need to start saving for that, as HAVA grant money for the federal government is no longer available. as it was when we purchased the present voting equipment in 2006. I also intend to deliver accurate, organized, and timely certifications of election results and provide the highest level of service and standards possible to the residents of our county.
Thank you. Vicki Weisty, you have 30 seconds to rebuttal.
Well, there's not really anything to rebut there. I think all of Julie's ideas are exemplary, and I would do all of those same things myself. I think one thing people really do expect from the clerk's office is prompt counting of returns on election night. And that's clearly a process that needs to be audited and examined. But I think the other issue with election security is what it is that makes our county perceive our elections as insecure, and that's something we need to address.
Time's up. Thank you. Julie Roush, you have 30 seconds.
Well, there's one thing she said in her beginning statement where she said everyone should receive receipts. And I do want to let you know the reason that no one receives a receipt on how they voted is because what can happen is coercion or bribery. Even in Tippecanoe, there are stories of the day when people were given, if they went and voted and came back, they got even a glass of whiskey. So that is a practice we do not want to do.
Okay, I'll be asking question 2, and Julie Roush will go first on this question. The question is, the security and auditability of elections are critical for our democracy. What steps do you think need to be taken to make sure that Tippecanoe County elections are secure and auditable, both long-term and in the next 3 years? You have 2 minutes.
Voting system security is crucial. There will always be new recommendations, new technology, and new best practices where cybersecurity is concerned. Training poll workers, following protocol, and updating them when necessary is important in protecting our systems. We must always be a step ahead of someone who would like to hack our system. However, the clerk should always build confidence and trust in our voting systems. So here are the facts. There has never been a voting machine that has been hacked. None of our machines have ever been connected to the internet. None of our machines use a modem to transfer data. All of Indiana's voting systems have a paper trail. You heard me right, a paper trail used for auditing. Indiana's statewide voter registration system has never been hacked. Indiana works with the Department of Homeland Security, who tests networks and data systems. Indiana is unique in that we have a voting system technical oversight program called VSTOC, where Ball State tests and certifies every piece of equipment in Indiana. Machines are locked in a cage, only accessible by a Republican and a Democrat at the same time. Each has a different key. Every compartment of the machine is marked with security tape and is not usable if found to be tampered with. We have extra measures in place to protect our voter registration system. Computers are IP whitelisted. We use a 2-factor authentication to access the system, and it's time sensitive, meaning that you can only use it during work hours. We back up our system every 3 minutes. I would continue those practices.
Vicki Weisty, I'll restate the question. The security and auditability of elections are critical for our democracy. What steps do you think need to be taken to make sure that Tippecanoe County elections are secure and auditable, both long-term and in the next 3 years?
If we continue to use our current machines for the next 3 years, something I actually do not support, we need to find a way to create an independent, auditable paper trail. What we're doing now is counting the same set of votes from the same machine in 2 different ways. That's not an independent check of the data. Paper ballots are the best way, according to industry standards, to provide a set of data that can be independently checked against the memory cards that are used in the machine to record votes. We don't have that. We do have it in other counties in Indiana. We also have receipts being given out in other counties in Indiana. And as far as I know, there have been no whiskey bribes. There's also no voter fraud of any degree in the state of Indiana. The real problem we have is voter suppression. The effects of our extremely stringent voter ID law have meant that many students are not eligible to vote when they present themselves at the polling places that they wish to vote at. This is something that will take a great deal of cooperation with the state legislature to fix.
Thank you. Julie Rauch, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
It's important to know that the industry now sells and manufactures hybrid systems, which are part direct reporting electronic voting machines, what we use now, and part optical scanner. They offer a verifiable paper trail. What it does is it prints out the ballot, you feed it in the scanner, and you get to view that. So it's a moot point to debate. That's what's coming in the future. That is most likely our future after the Election Assistant Commission standards have been approved, since that's where industries are going with the development of the new machines.
Thank you. Okay, question 3 will be for Vicki Wieste first. And it is, in recent years, some clerks nationally, such as the clerk in Kentucky who refused to issue same-sex marriage license, have used their position to take a hard stance on political issues. How will your personal feelings and ideals, whether religious or political, guide your actions as clerk?
I believe in the separation of church and state. When I am sworn into office, if I am chosen for this job, I will swear an oath to uphold the Indiana Constitution. No other document, the Indiana Constitution. The clerk must execute the laws as written. There is every opportunity to display one's religious values in the way one interacts with all of the stakeholders in the office. But it is wrong for a clerk to impose his or her personal religious convictions on the permitting, licensing, and other functions of the court. And as you recall, Jane, Kim Davis, the clerk in Kentucky, was actually cited for contempt of court for what she did. And then her resistance became moot because the Supreme Court ruled in favor of marriage equality. My personal feelings on marriage equality are irrelevant to my execution of the job of clerk.
Thank you. I'll restate the question for Julie Rauch. In recent years, some clerks nationally, such as the clerk in Kentucky who refused to issue same-sex marriage licenses, have used their position to take a hard stance on political issues. How will your personal feelings and ideals, whether religious or political, guide your actions as clerk?
As clerk, personal opinions have no place. All public officials take an oath. As a township trustee, I have taken an oath to follow the law. In my current office, I serve all people from all walks of life equally and fairly, no matter their politics, their race, religion, sexual preference, or nationality. If elected clerk, I will take another oath and will follow the law. It is legal for a same-sex couple to marry, and that the clerk is to file marriage licenses. I will follow the law and issue a same-sex couple marriage license. I will continue to provide public service to county residents. All public officials should do their job and even go beyond. You know, many of our clients do not drive, and I'm talking about going beyond the duty. The city bus denied our appeal to have a stop near our office, so they have to walk from the bus station to our office. Many times we will drive them back to the bus stop for various reasons due to bad weather, illness, or they just underwent surgery. Recently, I drove a young lady and her child back to the bus stop. She was highly stressed, had walked to the office 8 months pregnant with a 10-month-old baby and a rambunctious 2-year-old. After I dropped her off, I pulled her stroller out of my car and told her that she should lay the back down so that she could fit both children in the stroller. She said she used to do that until the stroller broke. Just imagine this very pregnant mother trying to keep her 2-year-old while she's pushing a baby in a stroller in a busy street. When I arrived back at the office, I asked my staff to put the word out, and they got her stroller in a week. We've done this with other things also, but that's true public service. We are to serve the people and follow the law.
Thank you. Vicki Wieste, you have 30 seconds. for rebuttal?
There's nothing to rebut there.
All right. Julie Roush, any more? Okay, thank you. All right, our fourth question will go first to Julie Roush. If elected, will Tippecanoe County Clerk be your full-time position, or will you maintain other roles? Please explain any other commitments. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, you think that? My focus is managing this office. It's gonna be a full-time. In fact, that is going to be, there's gonna be overtime involved. But managing, in my experience, running local government effectively and efficiently and transparently will be my focus. I'm a trustee, and I am involved on boards, but they are related to my job. And so the other things that I believe that I will be doing, if I do it outside of being a clerk, they're gonna be related. There's gonna be classes that I go to, and I don't know everything that might be available today, but things that will help me get in front of the public so I can talk to them more about, we need to be transparent. So I'd like to share things, educate people. So if it puts me out there to where I can talk about the office and help explain how it's run or what they need, then I'm going to be involved in that. I am actually hoping that the things that I do now, I have a lot of things that I do. This year, we're working full-time, and the things that I'm involved in, I hardly have any spare time, and that's been tough. I'm actually looking forward to a change of that, and to focus on one area, and that's what I look forward to. The office is too important to have other things involved.
Thank you. I'll restate the question for Vicki Weisty. If elected, will Tippecanoe County Clerk be your full-time position, or will you maintain other roles? Please explain any other commitments.
So I think this question is getting at the very Richard problem, since you're asking about the full-time job versus other roles. This is a full-time job. I don't anticipate maintaining any other paid employment. That would be, I think, in a way dishonest to the taxpayers and unfair to everybody that relies on the office of clerk. I do hope I have some time to get back to some sewing and quilting. But really, I mean, I'm sure, just like Julie, when you're a working mother, you're trying to balance lots and lots of different plates in the air at the same time. So, for me, this job is going to actually be a much more intense working experience than the very flexible kind of work that I do as a law professor. I expect to follow Krista Coffey's example and put in lots of Saturdays learning the ropes. But I also imagine that this job will enable me to get out into the community more and to understand the needs of our community better.
Julie Roush, you have 30 seconds.
I'll just add, I can say with my experience what I've learned is time management, because I do a lot of things. The thought of actually being paid for a second job never even crossed my mind. I can't imagine how anybody could even do that. That's all I have to say.
Vicki Weisty?
No? Good.
Thank you. Question 5 will go to Vicki Weisty first. The question is, if elected, do you have any plans to work to improve voter turnout in Tippecanoe County?
Absolutely. Improving voter turnout. And improving voter turnout, frankly, our county has been not such a great performer, especially in primary elections, and our state is one of the bottom 5 in the nation, even in presidential years, in the last 4 or 5 presidential elections. It's been really, really embarrassing that we have not been able to improve voter turnout, even with the advent of early voting. So the happy news from May is that our voter turnout statewide, in fact, was up all the way from 18% to 20%. That might not seem like much, but in an off-year election, it is significant. And the way we improve voter turnout is we make voting more accessible to people. I have a list of things that I'd like to do, starting with, for one thing, extending voting hours on election day. A lot of people really like the idea of voting on election day. It feels ceremonial, it's a ritual, something they do with their kids, their parents did with them. But working people can't always get to the polls between 6 and 6. We have the shortest voting day of any state in the Eastern time zone. So the first thing to do is to lobby hard to get the legislature to extend the voting day. And I have other things that I'll talk about when I get the chance.
Thank you. I will now restate the question for Julie Roush. If elected, do you have any plans to work to improve voter turnout in Tippecanoe County?
Absolutely, we should always improve voter turnout. The confidence in the election system must be maintained because we don't want to deter anybody from voting. You don't want them to think my vote doesn't count or my vote might not tally. Also, voter access must be maximized by providing convenient voter locations and by utilizing the best available technology. These are the best methods to foster and achieve high participation. However, I do want to mention about the statistics on Tippecanoe County's voting percentages do seem like they're one of the worst. But one of the reasons is because our voter percentage is flawed because of a transient nature of Purdue students inflating the total number of registrations. Federal law safeguards the removal of any voter from the official roster for 5 years. So until that time elapses, they stay on the voter rolls. And by then, many of those registered student voters have left the community years ago. Consequently, our registration numbers are inflated, which lowers the participation rate. As clerk, I will support, though, the BMV's efforts to increase voter registration, along with local governments and the League of Women Voters, efforts to assist people, including college and eligible high school students, to register to vote, because together we can ensure all residents eligible to vote have an opportunity to participate.
Thank you. Vicki Weesty, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Okay, I'd like to know, if it's possible, where we could find out how many of these departed Purdue students remain on the voter rolls. In 2017, our Secretary of State knocked 500,000 Hoosiers off the voter rolls, including almost 11,000 here in Tippecanoe County. My question is, if there's so many former Purdue students still on the rolls, why wasn't that number higher?
Julie Roush, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
They have to stay on for 5 years, so I'm only talking about a 5-year span. However, I also want to add that for voting, finding places, we should always be looking for places that are ADA compliant, that are easier to use. I just heard a story from a trustee where he fought in his area to get a voting center there because he knew the people that lived out there were not coming into town to vote or even in any of the voting centers. So he got one set up. Those are other things that we can look at, other places that might be better suited.
I will now ask question number 6, which will go to Julie Roush first. Is the administration of elections in Tippecanoe County sufficiently funded? If additional funding could be secured, where would you allocate it?
Mm-hmm. This is going to be if we could come up with funding for replacement, that's what we need the most, is to replace our system, our election system. Replacing existing voting equipment must be a thought out process, though, and these strategies must fit into the county's budget and overall strategic asset replacement plan set for 2021, a non-election year. Equipment should not be purchased on a whim, but rather undergo a detailed evaluation and replacement procurement process. It requires an interdisciplinary collaborative approach that must be accurate, reliable, yet cost-effective, secure and usable and accessible to all voters, including those persons with disabilities. Employing a multi-stakeholder process is critical. We must bring together election officials, industry technical experts, and advocacy groups to address this challenge and wait for the EAC, which is the Election Assistance Commission, to adopt new voter standards and guidelines in 2019. Active collaboration between the public and private sectors is the only way to effectively meet this challenge leveraging each participant's roles and responsibilities. This will take time. Tippecanoe County is a leader in the vote center concept. However, we must always be evaluating the system improvements. The new replacement of the machines are going to be very costly. I mentioned the hybrid system. They will cost more because every one of them needs a printer. Every one of them needs to have a database that can hold every single type of ballot in Tippecanoe County. Because we have voter centers, they have to be at every single voter center. This will be costly. And right now, we do not have any HAVA monies available.
I will restate the question for Vicki Weesty. Is the administration of elections in Tippecanoe County sufficiently funded? If additional funding could be secured, where would you allocate it?
I would actually second much of what Julie just said about the process that needs to be engaged in order to purchase new voting machines. It will take time. We do have to comply with all applicable regulations and standards. But the county should have been planning for this. The county could have been setting aside money in a rainy day fund that could have been designated for the purchase of these new machines. That's something I would encourage them to do. What I think really needs to be funded more is the professionalization of the poll workers. We really do need to invest more money in training the people that run the polling places. It is really difficult to make sure that there's a consistent application of all the applicable rules and procedures across all voting places during the entire course of an election. I've heard stories of things that have not been quite regular, that one poll worker didn't quite follow the rules, or two poll workers weren't present when a particular machine was audited. Those are the kinds of things we ought to spend more time professionalizing in the county clerk's office. The Board of Elections budget is less than $250,000. I think this is something where we really ought to be investing more money. If people really are worried about the security of our elections, let's make sure our elections are conducted professionally. Thanks.
Julie Roush, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
You know, when you replace voting systems, it does take a lot of effort, and you have to redo everything. All training material, the processes, you have to rethink and implement them. You have to re-educate the staff. You have to find new storage space. Each technology needs different things. I do know that the Secretary of State has stated that she's developing a grant funding program that will offer money to help different counties replace those machines.
Vicki Weesty, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Secretary of State. There was a $7 million federal grant that came to Indiana this year that was supposed to go towards improving election security this November. Instead, the Secretary of State spent that money going on a listening tour that came way too late in the campaign year to do anybody much good at all. So, I gotta say, that strikes me as a misguided priority and a misuse of the federal money that we could have spent investigating the purchase of our new machines.
This next question goes to Vicki Weesty. Tippecanoe County has been a leader in implementing early voting and vote centers in the state. Do you support a vote-by-mail system such as in Washington, Oregon, and Colorado? Would you support Tippecanoe County piloting vote-by-mail for the state?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The 3 states that you just mentioned, Kayla, Washington, Oregon, and Colorado, have seen their voter turnout numbers go through the roof. I'm talking north of 70% in the case of Colorado. What's not to like about that? And the other thing people need to realize is that voting by mail can be made just as secure as voting in person with an election machine. We can produce ballots just like absentee ballots, which are also difficult to forge, that are coded with an individual hologram or a UPC code for each individual voter. That means that each voter can only turn in 1 ballot. And nobody can forge ballots because UPC codes that are not already entered in the system will be rejected. So there's actually an initiative in Indiana called Indiana Vote by Mail. You should go online and check them out. They've been traveling around the state making presentations about how effective voting by mail can be. I'd love to see us be a test site for that kind of experiment because it's been proven to work in other states, and I really think people would enjoy the ease, the convenience, and they would be much more inclined to participate in their elections, which is the goal.
Thank you. I will restate the question for Julie Roush. Tippecanoe County has been a leader in implementing early voting and vote centers in the state. Do you support a vote-by-mail system such as in Washington, Oregon, and Colorado? Would you support Tippecanoe County piloting vote-by-mail for the state?
Although I believe it sounds very convenient, it is convenient, but I'd be leery of vote by mail. I'll be honest, it's not something I've studied much, but if you think about it, in 2005 when the ID law was passed, our current clerk had told me where they witnessed people come in with pieces of paper with names on it. They were names, not who to vote for, but who to vote as. So it is something that we would definitely want to research before we would ever implement to see, well, what kind of problems can happen? Can fraud occur? Can people somehow get these ballots and mail them for someone else? Because somehow even though, as Vicki said, there may be numbers on the bottom that say who it's coming from, but did it really come from that person? These are things that we really must research and find ways that if it is something that's going to come in the future, that we ensure it's coming from the voter themselves.
We don't seem too worried about whether absentee ballots are coming from the voters themselves. And again, it's happening in other states. We see this already. We can go and look online, and understand how those states have set up those systems and see how they work. If you're that worried about voter fraud, you might want to look at the report of the Vice President's Voter Fraud Commission, which found, in fact, that there was no voter fraud of any degree anywhere in the country, including in the states that use vote by mail. So I think the real difference here, I have to quit. I'll make my point later.
30 seconds, Julie.
I just want to add that it's also a decision that's made by the state legislators and the Secretary of State. It is not a decision made by the clerk.
Thank you. We actually have time for some of our bonus questions. Julie Roush, you will get to go first on this one. So last year, a Tippecanoe County clerk employee was prosecuted for stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from the office over a 10-year period. As clerk, how would you work to maintain financial integrity in the office?
Well, it's very important to set up internal controls. It's very important that you have procedures in place and that they're followed. The person that receives the mail cannot be the same person that's going to make the deposit, things like that. It is very important that everybody that touches money, it goes to another person to verify. That's the most important. That is terrible that happened, and it's embarrassing, I know, that it happened for so many years, but it is something that I do at the township now. We collect money, and we literally have written procedures, and we've gone through this, and the State Board of Accounts is working very hard to ensure that all local governments are paying a much better attention to that kind of thing, because we can't. This is taxpayer monies, and we must take good care of it. We must be responsible in every way that we can.
I will repeat the question. Last year, a Tippecanoe County clerk employee was charged for stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars from the office over a 10-year period. As clerk, how would you work to maintain financial integrity in the office? Vicki Wieste?
I think one of the things that has to happen is the clerk has to be a really good judge of character in hiring. I'm not sure how it came to be that one employee was able to pull off a crime like that over such a long period of time. But supervision is absolutely essential. You have to have several sets of eyes on every process in order to make sure that the money is accounted for down to the penny. I'm glad to hear Julie talk about the financial operations of the township governments, because I have to say, this year I've learned quite a lot about township government officials and their responsibilities. And I have to wonder, where do we go to find out what the townships have done with their monies? Is it best practice, for instance, to invest township money in a CD rather than give it out to applicants for assistance? So there are questions about township government that we can't answer because the information is simply not available to us. It needs to be much more transparent, and I really like to understand the township processes better than it's possible to do right now.
Julie Roush, you have 30 seconds.
Not sure why this became a township issue, but I will say that our local government townships are the most transparent. Everything that we do, our budgets, our annual reports are all online. And yes, if we have available monies, we can put them in a CD. All of it's online. Like I said, you can go on the state website, Gateway, and you can get any records on any government, local government here.
Well, it became relevant to discuss townships because you've been talking about your experience as a township trustee. So I simply am raising the question, where do we go to find out this information? It's not on the township trustee website. It's also not clear to me, from talking to a candidate for Fairfield Township trustee this year, why it is that a bookkeeper was only hired this year, and why it is that the spending of the township trustee's office is difficult to ascertain.
Moving on, how will you work to make the clerk's office transparent? This will go to Vicki Weesty first.
Clerk's office transparent. That's actually, I think, a bit of a conundrum because much of what the clerk does is really not visible to the public. I mean, the election work is the main point at which the clerk interacts with the public. But the greater majority of the job is working with the judges to administer the courts, and that kind of stuff really is kind of below the radar. So communication with the public and outreach and transparency, using websites, using events where the clerk helps to educate the public about the functions of the office and the functions of the court. All of these are good ideas, but I think there's a general level of sort of a lack of knowledge about most levels of government in our state, in our country. And I think one of the great things that's come out of this campaign year is that we have so many candidates running for many of these offices that people have not even heard of before. So it's bringing attention, for instance, to the clerk's office that it's a contested race this year. We're here discussing the functions of the office. This debate will be put online and people can watch the video and learn a great deal about what the clerk does on a day-to-day basis. So this is all part of the broader educative function that elections are supposed to provide.
I will restate the question for Julie Roush. How will you work to make the clerk's office transparent?
Our state has done a really great job in improving our ability to put things that the public might want to know, such as budgets and annual reports, right online. You can even, we put contracts online now. We put our bank statements and reconciliations. So there have been improvements in that, but one of the misnomers, it's a buzzword. Transparency is a buzzword. Everybody likes to hear transparency, but I'll tell you, you're only as transparent as how much the public is willing to come to public meetings. That's where you get most of the information, but I hate to say this, there is less people that are interested in what's going on in their county, what's going on in their township, what's going on in their city. They're not attending these meetings. That's one of the best places if you want to know what's going on. That's what transparency is knowing what are they doing? What are they working on? How are they spending their money? I just ask, go to a meeting. We should all care more about what is going on with our government.
You'll have 30 seconds to rebuttal.
Yeah, so part of the problem with that, and it's a great idea, we should all go to as many of these meetings as we can. Problem is, many of them are scheduled during the workday. So people who have 9-to-5 jobs can't be present at these meetings. That's a real political choice, I think, that's made in a lot of these meeting choices. I think the county councilors should meet during the evenings so people can see what's happening to the $50 million budget that they get to allocate.
Julie Roush, 30 seconds.
People work all different shifts, first shift, second shift, third shift. And so if people have an issue, you know what, they need to call. What meeting do they go to? Because if they talk to the lead person, that can change. I would certainly change ours. If I had the public calling me saying, hey, can you have it at 5 or 8 in the morning or even at noon? We would absolutely consider that because our job is to provide public service. I've never once had anybody ask me to change. I do want to add though, nope, I won't, thank you.
Okay, well that's it for the question portion, but we're gonna go ahead and let you guys have closing statements. I believe, who went first last time? Was it Vicki? Okay, we'll have Julie close.
I have over 15 years of local government experience and have served the people with responsibility, integrity, loyalty, and efficiency. I'm a hands-on administrator providing excellent stewardship of government assets with a master's degree in business administration from Purdue University and with a strong financial background gained previously as an accounting associate at Home Hospital and a financial advisor at Smith Barney. I have successfully executed operational effectiveness, government accountability, and transparency and compliance with Indiana laws and have an unblemished audit history as trustee. Being elected as the West Central Area Director for Indiana Township Association, I have assisted other governmental units in establishing standards and internal controls, and have shared my time and resources to help other units operate efficiently and prevent mismanagement, errors, waste, abuse, and fraud. Managing voter precincts as a precinct committeeman, being elected as a state delegate, and serving as an elected official have given me many years of experience with the election process and knowledge of the Indiana Election Code. I served on Legal Aid's Advisory Board and was appointed to the Access of Justice team by Judge Greg Donay. I have also gained important knowledge of legal court proceedings through close-up experiences, have been appointed by Judge Loretta Rush as a court-appointed special advocate and by Judge Faith Brand to serve on the Tippecanoe County Child Protective Team. I have clearly displayed my leadership and management abilities, am highly respected, and have been recognized on several occasions by the community and the state of Indiana for my achievements, commitment to public service. I would be honored to serve you as your county clerk, because what's most important is you, the people, who are the soul of this county. You are why the county clerk's office is important. The volume of public interaction alone makes this office vitally important, in addition to the fact that many transactions the clerk handles are life-impacting. The Tippecanoe County Clerk's Office interacts with tens of thousands of people, performs hundreds of thousands of transactions each year, and collects millions of dollars a month in child support that go directly to those in need. Although elections are only about 10% of the clerk's job, the right to vote is vital. We must adapt security measures to protect the integrity of our elections, improve voter registration and participation that will promote trust and confidence in the voting process. We must purchase voting equipment not on a whim, but rather undergo a detailed evaluation and replacement procurement process, an interdisciplinary collaborative approach after new standards have been approved. I'm experienced, proven, and trusted, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you. Vicki Weisty.
Thanks, Kayla. I respect Julie's record in public service. I'm impressed with her accomplishments. I still think I'm a far better candidate for this job. I've been studying, writing, and teaching about our legal system since I was 19 years old. I understand how courts operate. I recognize the goals of our judges in processing cases of every kind. This part of the job is the far greater share of what the clerk does. I won't need time to get up to speed. But there's a bigger, I think, difference here. And that is, I will not let bureaucracy become an obstacle to moving forward. I really think that the difference here is simply one of emphasis and approach. I'm looking to improve voter turnout by moving forward, by being proactive, by adopting new techniques, new technologies, and new strategies. I've spoken with more than 1,000 voters going door to door so far this election year. They're concerned about whether our elections are secure and whether their votes are counted as cast. I think we should not waste a moment in pursuing the process that we need to put into place in order to obtain new election machines sooner rather than later. I believe in the ideal of public service. In fact, I will be taking a 27% pay cut if I am elected to this job. I'm not doing it for the money. I believe in the fair and equal administration of justice at every level. I believe the right to vote is fundamental and should not be withdrawn from anyone unless they are incarcerated. I believe government should make it easier for people to exercise their rights, not more difficult. And lastly, I feel quite strongly that our county has been under one-party rule for a long, long time. Our political system assumes that power should be divided so that the checks and balances system can function in a meaningful way. For years, we have had little to no transparency in our county and township governments. That's my goal, to make our government open and verifiable to everyone. It's time to make our voices heard and our votes count. As clerk, I will ensure that all voters have access to the ballot box in every election to the fullest extent of the law. That's what you all deserve. I ask for your vote in November for Clerk of Courts of Tippecanoe County. Thank you.
Thank you to Vicki Weasty and Julie Roush. And thank you for all behaving so well and doing such a great job and following all the rules. Thanks, and make sure that you remember to vote. Voting begins October 10th and ends on November 6th. Don't forget your IDs when you go and vote. Yeah, you can go ahead and clap.